A shocking arrest at the southern border. An American citizen is under arrest, charged with 4 counts of human smuggling. Texas Department of Public Safety exclusively sharing this video with Mornings with Maria. Troopers in Valverde County pull over a 29-year-old woman identified as Shakira Dominique Jordan from Mississippi. She was pulled over for speeding, then detained. In the car, 4 illegal aliens were discovered. Cops say they're from Cuba and El Salvador, but one classified as a special interest alien from Afghanistan. Investigators say Jordan was driving the 4 illegal aliens across the border from Mexico. She's now facing 4 felony counts of human smuggling. The same day, DPS captured 2 special interest aliens from Pakistan after they tried to evade law enforcement on a private ranch. I want to bring in Texas Department of Public Safety Lieutenant Christopher Olivarez. Lieutenant, tell us more about this arrest.
Well, good morning, Cheryl. Thanks for having me on. Of course, we've always talked about, especially the last 4 years, about public safety and national security risks, especially gotaways. And I think this investigation, this human smuggling investigation by one of our troopers, really underscores the importance of our troopers being out there stopping and interdicting these criminal smugglers. This woman, a U.S. citizen, as you mentioned, from Mississippi, came down to the border for the sole purpose to smuggle illegal immigrants. And one of those illegal immigrants was a special interest alien from Afghanistan. And that in itself poses to be a public safety and national security risk, especially we don't know who these individuals are that are being smuggled into the interior. So a great job by our troopers, and really highlights the fact that Texas, we're still at the forefront of this border operation that we've been doing since 2021, when Governor Abbott first launched Operation Lone Star. It really prioritizes the enhancement of public safety and border security from our state troopers working in Texas. So again, great job by our trooper. And you got to also think too, and also for the viewers, that if our trooper wasn't out there, these are 4 potential gotaways that would have made it into the interior, and really not knowing exactly this special interest alien from Afghanistan, what his background is, what his intentions were, where was he going to end up. So I think that in itself really shows that we still have active activity on the border, especially when we talk about and include gotaways and special interest aliens. So again, great work by our trooper, and the fact that we're still out there and we're still carrying on our mission in Texas and committed to border security.
But obviously the question here, though, is, in my mind, who is paying her? Do we have any? Was it a cartel? Is that the working theory? Can you give us any more idea?
Typically that's how it works, Cheryl. This particular woman, she told one of our troopers that she was getting paid $500 per person that she smuggled, which, obviously that's pretty low, especially for someone that's being smuggled from Afghanistan. But that's what she told our troopers. But again, typically when we see, smugglers from out of state, it's organized. I mean, they are talking to a criminal smuggling organization. They facilitate a rental car. This was a rental car in this particular video that this woman was driving. And they come down to the border. They know where to go. They use encrypted messaging, GPS coordinates to pick up people and then smuggle them from point A to point B. And that's where they receive payments. So it's still very organized. We're not seeing it to the level that we saw the last 4 years, but nonetheless, the cartels are very discreet. They're very careful now in how they continue to carry out their smuggling operations. That's why it is vital to have our state troopers on these major highways interdicting these smugglers to prevent these gotaways and these potential public safety and national security risks from making it into the interior.
Well, and the cartels are still dangerous operations and dangerous people, and this is about fentanyl trafficking and about money. And under the Biden administration, we're talking about $1 billion industry. The cartels weren't just going to walk away and put their guns down because President Trump was elected. It's not how this works, and we know that, unfortunately. I want to ask you about this. The Pentagon ordered an unusually large naval buildup in Latin America. There's at least 7 vessels down there, 3 guided missile destroyers off the waters of Venezuela. The White House is accusing President Maduro of heading up a drug cartel. Maduro's calling up millions of militia members. He's deploying like 15,000 troops to the Colombia border to defend his country. What does this mean to all of you? Because I know one of the things that we've seen at the southern border over the last 4 years has been an inordinate amount of Venezuelans.
Well, exactly right. And this is if you kind of look back the last 4 years, I mean, Venezuela allowed hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans into our country that crossed through Texas, to include now the designated foreign terrorist organization known as TDA. And we've seen what these these terrorist organizations have caused in our country, how it's impacted U.S. citizens' lives. Some have committed heinous crimes to include murder. But the fact is that now we're seeing more of an aggressive posture by the United States. And again, the cartels are going to exploit, vulnerabilities, especially in countries like Venezuela when there's instability. They're going to use those countries to smuggle large shipments of drugs, whether it be cocaine, methamphetamine, or fentanyl. So by having these U.S. naval ships, it's going to interdict those drugs before they actually make it to Central America or Mexico, and then ultimately into our country. So again, this really shows how the administration, how the United States is really taking a more proactive posture and trying to interdict these large shipments of drugs by the cartels. Again, the cartels are going to adapt, as you mentioned earlier. They're going to adapt to the changes. We may not see the level that we saw the last 4 years because they have been impacted, as you mentioned, also by human smuggling. There was a multi-billion-dollar criminal network for the cartels. That has decreased significantly. So now what they're going to do is increase their shipments of cocaine, methamphetamine, other illicit drugs by using the sea or the coastal water, especially in the Caribbean, to get their drugs across the United States. So again, really shows the proactiveness from this administration, how they are working to try to stop these large shipments of drugs, but also how we also on the ground in Texas, we are the last line of defense when it comes to these type of operations, because we want to stop that flow of drugs making their way into our state as well, and also to the entire country.
And that's why they put so much focus on the tunnels in Arizona. And I've seen some reporting now that the cartels in Mexico are moving towards other countries, trying to extend their reach into Colombia, into other Central American countries to broaden out their enterprise because they've taken a financial hit from the United States. I do want to ask you about President Trump. He's really gaining some political leverage in the fight against Latin American drug cartels that we're talking about. There was this guilty plea of Sinaloa cartel co-founder El Mayo. El Mayo admitted to decades of coordination with Mexican officials to smuggle drugs to the U.S. Now, likely going to be behind bars the rest of his life, Lieutenant. But your reaction, I think the fact that it's the cartel members and the government officials working together, it's like something that you think you believe, but he said that was happening.
Well, I mean, of course, El Mayo is probably one of the most influential, cartel leaders of the Sinaloa cartel, actually in cartel history. And the fact that now that he has, pled guilty, it is a really significant impact to the organization. But nonetheless, cartels operate like corporations. You have one leader falls, someone else is going to step in and fill that gap. And that's what's been happening, especially if you look back when El Chapo got arrested, one of the leaders from the Sinaloa cartel. The cartel continued to move on. And of course, we saw the flow of fentanyl at the highest level in the last 4 years. So the cartels will adapt to those changes. I mean, like I said, they're like corporations, and they are truly a global threat. And that's why, we need to focus on really trying to stop the flow of drugs and really going after not only the leaders, but really stopping that supply chain of drugs and really going after their finances. Yeah. Trying to disrupt their finances. That's really going to impact the cartels. Well, but again, this is a time to really go after them, especially where they're at the weakest point, to really go after these organizations.
Sorry I interrupted you, but it seems that that's why the Trump administration is going so hard after Mexico's president.
Exactly.
The tariff fight, because of this. It's all connected, unfortunately. Lieutenant Christopher Olivarez, thank you so much for being with us on this Friday. Really appreciate it.